Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another night of miniature painting. The music you just heard was my good friend Chilean made the song Secret Muse for me to use for introduction and videos, use it from a presentation video, stuff like that. The music that will begin right about now is, as always, Adrian van Ziegler. There's some really wonderful music. Go support both of them. There should be links somewhere in the chat or in channel or on YouTube, wherever. I'm sure you can find it. Anyway, today we will be continue work on this Bone Devil for D&D. And I have actually been trying to look for a little bit better lighting situation here. I'd really like to get a ring light for that camera there. So you actually have light straight from the miniature from the camera. So anyway, I'm a little curious about this Bone Devil, other than it being an awesome mini and fun to play paint. But when we played D&D last time, just before Christmas, my game master told me to, well, optional of course, but if I had the time, he said, please print a Bone Devil. You'll need it next time. And since I play a Vengeance Paladin, really don't like demons and devils, I'm guessing that we have to go somewhere and kill off a Bone Devil, which is gonna be fun. So I'm painting it, and we're playing Tuesday, so better get ready soon. Anyway, I'm not gonna do a super fancy job on this, just basically did some base coat, priming and base coat with the airbrush, and then just did a quick shade over the body. It's gonna be dry brushing it up and then doing something with the wings. I'm thinking I'm gonna go Army Painter speed paint for the wings because I really like the way it does, and it's not gonna give me hopefully any problems with reactivating, because after I've done the wings, I'm basically gonna be finished with the miniature, so I won't be painting near the speed paints. So let's try that. And if you can actually see it, I tried and kind of failed at doing the base with kind of a lava volcanoes backdrop. So basically what I tried doing was get some of the technical crackle paints from Games Workshop, mixing in some black and then having crackle up. It's kind of a classic effect that I don't really have an example of here. But unfortunately, I think I'm either mixed in too much black, or the black really just destroys the crackle effect. So it's very subtle. You can only just barely see it. But underneath all this black, what I did was paint different various shades. Why did Spotify stop again? Well, I don't know why, but we need good music. So anyway, it seems to be running. Or maybe I just looked at the monitor. I kind of have the sound bar. That's kind of my only gauge of where, or indicator if it's actually playing, but maybe I just looked immediately between two songs. So anyway, don't mind that. Anyway, I painted different shades of yellow, orange, red, and then the crackle, when it's done correctly, gives this really nice lava effect that actually looks like you're sort of different flaming underground underneath it. Anywho, on to the painting. As I said, dry brushing, and just start off lightly. It's basically just going to be back to the skeletal bone. The color the wings are is actually the base color of the entire model before I did the shading. So but anyway, the thing I wanted to troll Bill with, you can actually see it up there in the right hand corner. It's a small clue. We'll see if he gets here, and if he actually gets, sort of can recognize what it is. If he can, it's fine. He passes the exam. If not, I'll give him another hint. And another hint, and so on, until eventually he just sees the entire thing, and then we'll take it from there. It is in fact knobs, but I will go one step further than volume knobs and say that they are programmable knobs. Might give people a little bit of a hint about what it's for, or what kind of product we're looking at. And you cannot see what the hell I'm working on here. Tiny screw things. Well, they are knobs, as I said. You can twist them. You can even, or turn them. You can even turn them both ways. They have a very nice sort of tactile feedback with the way, sort of the weight, how difficult it is to turn, and so on. So, have you guys had a good Christmas so far? Or holidays, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate? I mean, if you don't celebrate anything, hope you've had a wonderful weekend. Emily's Christmas was good, work's been slow this week. Well, I mean, you're your own boss, so... I don't know, by slow do you mean it's been slow going, or not a lot to do? Still gotta work when the client says not a lot to do. Okay. Well, I mean, it's both good and bad if when you don't have a lot to do. I mean, it gives you a little bit of a respite, or whatever how it's pronounced. But at the same time, it's also like, yeah, still got a business to run and all. Organizing embroidery threads. Now, I'm guessing they're not threads on a Discord server, but actual physical threads. And they need organizing. We just like yarn for crocheting, knitting, and so on. Or paints, for that matter. See, look at this guy. I mean, it helps so much just even with the basic dry brush. Really brings out the details of the mini. And on this one, since there's actually no sort of details other than the sculpt itself, I mean, there are the spikes that I might go in with slightly different color, or maybe just highlight them all the way up and just sort of like make them white or gray or whatever. And also, since it's a resin mini, they can be a little brittle, so it's really good idea to just support them just a little bit, like when doing the hand here. Instead of just going straight at the hand, I just place my finger underneath it. Hopefully it will prevent breakage. Okay, so your daughter got you an organized set with bobbin things and a winder and a box to put it in. So much thread. Yes, but so much thread means so many options, Emily. Options are good. I mean, if I look at all, the different hobby stuffs I've got lying around, including both, threads for sewing, crocheting yarn. I'm not gonna call it knitting yarn because knitting never really sat right with me. Somehow I could never really control the two sticks properly. But yeah, you just need your options. When it says going through cookbooks to find recipes they're good to make for dinner for 20 to 40 people at a time. That's a lot of people. So yeah. Yeah, but see that's the thing about looking at recipes or going to buy groceries. Don't do it when you're hungry. Just do it at a time when you've preferably just eaten, so you don't get all sort of impulsive and go, oh, but I could also do this. I could also buy this. And I definitely need that as well. And now I get picky, so I'll also pick up a little bit of whatever. At least that's how it always ends up for me. When you're 40 people, and I kind of like the 20 to 40 people. Do you know how many you're gonna be? Or is that just gonna be revealed shortly before? Or is it one of those Facebook events where you never really know how many people actually show up? Because even those who have signed up are probably not gonna be there. Maybe this generally means no, and then all the other people who just show up anyway without really saying if they're going or not. So I guess the question is, will you actually know when you start cooking how many people are going to show up? Also, getting to the spines here and tail is actually a lot easier than I had feared it would be. It kind of helps that I'm only dry brushing and not trying to sort of precision paint anything down in that, I don't know, in between the wings and the stinger. So Vanessa, what options are you looking at so far? Okay, this is even simpler than doing armor. Now, one of the classics for painting armor, especially chainmail, is just paint it black, dry brush in some kind of silver, metallic, whatever sort of shade you actually want it to be. What's called, usually called what, gunbolt metal or something like that, gunmetal. Okay, so you're a volunteer at a cafe for people living in the area. And they cook dinner, communal dinner every Tuesday, and no, you never really know how many cups. Okay, so communal dinners. Yeah. That's kind of the thing where people show up, I guess, which is basically just a matter of making a bunch of food, having it ready. So yeah, that's cool. It's really great that you do that as well. So you have, the community thing and someone to meet and dine with. Sorry about the floaty camera. I didn't really get around to adjusting it before I started. So do you do this? I mean, I guess they do it every Tuesday, but do you cook every Tuesday as well, or is it just once in a while? Okay, so you never cook, you just decide what is to be cooked. But do you decide who is going to be cooked? That would be an interesting spin. Kind of like musical chairs, just with the residents. Just a little bit on the spot. Yeah, clean up. Okay. So you do the cleanup after someone else has cooked and served the food and so on. I think that's in many ways even better than cooking, because a lot of people would rather make a mess than clean a mess. I'm not saying that your co-workers or the other volunteers are messy as such, but it's just cooking for 40 people is going to leave a mess, period. There you go. It's beginning to look like something. It comes out a lot browner than I'd actually hoped, the mini here, but I mean that's my fault for just giving it a shade. I mean, even the army paint, the soft tone, is gonna come out light. Sorry, it's gonna come out brown. And I didn't want to go all the way down to full black, because full black tends to get really heavy on something like this. So what I am gonna do is, once I've finished the first dry brush here, I'll give it a quick dry brush with a brighter. Probably just gonna go straight to white instead of trying to mix up some kind of off-white. Just give it brief highlight in selected areas, which also means that I'm going slightly heavier on the sort of first round of dry brushing here. But yeah. Ooh, in other news, from around January, don't think I mentioned it this last time, I will be starting up a new real-life role-playing group. A former co-worker, I guess we're co-workers for another 2 days, but she's never tried role-playing before, another former co-worker that I technically never worked with, even though we were employed at the same time. He's done some role-playing, and then one from my old D&D group. Well, not that old, but one I ran about 1-2 years ago. We did a Cthulhu in Sandy Peterson's extension to 5e. We did like a Cthulhu horror-themed game with great success, except that they didn't go mad, which is kind of bad on my part. But yes, new group, and since some of these people, one of them has played a little bit of D&D before, but is generally a really clever person, and also has a bit more time because he just finished university and has a little bit more time reading up on new stuff and all that. And I wanted to introduce them to something different, so we were actually playing Earthdawn this time around. And Earthdawn is still... Oh hey, can we find the ban? Hello, Booney, Julie, ABC. Goodbye, Booney, Julie, ABC. That was also a new adventure. But hey, does this actually mean that I'm beginning to be, a well-known popular channel when the bots start showing up? Or are the bots just getting better at monitoring who goes live? Or in this case, worse, because I mean, this is not really gonna land them any business. So both. So okay, so I am getting famous. Excellent, excellent. Well, I promise I will remember you little people, when I hit the peak of my fame, because I'll need someone to pick me up when I crash and burn. Nah, just kidding. I would never even go for that. I mean, I'm not even really even doing anything to promote my stream other than post it in the IP Discord. The IP being the Incorrigible Party. A very wonderful group of people. Anyway, back to the Earthdawn group I'm starting up. Earthdawn, I mean, I know a lot of people, including once spent some time talking to one guy who has done various modules, probably also source books for different games, Robin Laws, and he kind of hinted at Earthdawn being one of those systems which should just be allowed to die, and that was back before the 3rd edition came out, and now we're on 4th edition. However, I'm still stuck in kind of what's called the Classic Edition, because that's the books I've got. I've got a bunch of 1st and 2nd edition as well, but the Classic Edition is pretty close to 1st edition. I've never looked at 3rd or 4th. Maybe do it at some point, but at the same time, I don't really care too much about the newest and latest rule systems unless they really change a lot and make it worth playing. It doesn't look like any of the other versions are doing it. So, but basically, what I really like about Earthdawn, the first thing that always comes to mind has absolutely nothing to do with the world or the system as such or anything else. That's one of my sort of small things. In Classic Edition, it's actually an optional rule. In the old systems, old versions, this is just how you did it. But instead of adding modifiers to your roll, what you do is you figure out what step number you have. Like you have your attributes. So you have strength, you have a strength check to make. So you take your strength, has a value of, let's say 5, whatever. And then if you have, it's either a skill check or what's called a talent, which you can basically think of as skills. Say you have well, melee weapons is a really bad choice because that actually runs on dexterity. Whatever. You're running a skill and you have a rank of 3 in that skill. That means that you add the 3 to your base of 5 for an 8. And then you look up in a table and see that 8 corresponds to 1d8 plus 1d6. I think it is. Or it's 2d6. Doesn't matter. You get a dice combination that on average will give you that step number. And then you roll those dice. And I know it really frustrates and confuses a lot of people, especially in the beginning. And they kind of go, okay, so, and they have to consult a table all the time, which I'm not a big fan of. But the fact that you get to roll different dice combinations instead of just a D20 with a modifier or D100 with a modifier or anything like that, you get to actually exercise all your different dice. And when you get sort of higher up in the, not called levels, it's called circles. But anyway, when we get to sort of mid-game, end-game, you'll sometimes be definitely rolling 2 dice, sometimes 3, maybe 4. You also have an effect called karma. Karma is a number of, you have a number of points, you can spend one of those points to roll an extra die on certain checks. There are rules for that. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple what you can use it for and what you can't. But that means that in addition to the D8 and D6 from before, you use a karma die. And let's say for the particular type of character you're playing, your karma die may actually be a D10. So you also roll a D10 and then you add all of it together, and that gives you your final score, for that roll. Which is kind of a fun way to do it. I think, I mean, I just like that. I like these amazing number of combinations of dice you roll and so on, and it actually gives you a really good spread and average as well, because, you know, for instance, one of my pet peeves with D&D is that the chance of rolling a 1 is as large as the chance of rolling a 20. And in many ways it should still be that, but it's also, you know, we have the exact same chance of rolling things in between. So you have it's an even spread. It's not a normal distribution. It's an even, I don't know if it's called even spread. I can't remember the English terms for this. Besides, when I did take statistics and probabilities way back, it was in Danish, so I have never really learned all the English terms anyway. But the spread you have, I think it's called, is even. It's not centered on the middle like a bell curve with a normal distribution. And that means that you'll get a lot of outliers. Outliers being a 1s and 20 on a D20. However, in Earthdawn, you're actually very often going to be very close to the average, which means that if you do find out you have a final step number of, say, 12, you will actually have a higher chance of rolling a 12 than you'll have of rolling a 2, or whatever, if you have 2 dice, of course. And I kind of like that, because, yeah, it's going to be fewer super high rolls, but more consistent average rolls. You can actually kind of plan for that. At least in my opinion, you can easily plan when you know that the distribution is like that. But as I said, it doesn't even end there, because if you roll the highest number of any dice, the regular dice you have from what's it called? Just your step number or whatever, if you have the karma dice in as well. If you have a max on a die, you just re-roll it. I think I had a bit of a laugh when I still saw on various D&D threads. People started noticing that, hey, that's a possibility. And I think it's super cool that people realize that there are options for this. Because it means that they'll be, expanding the way they play, hopefully trying out new things. I think the term they use is exploding dice. It's kind of interesting because I've been playing Earthdawn and Shadowrun, which uses the same reroll max and add to the number. I've been playing those since the early 90s. I've never heard it called exploding dice until a few months ago, I think it was this year. So, I mean, that is kind of, it's kind of a new thing for some people. But I think, I think it's great that people do it. But anyway, the concept with re-rolling the highest dice and continue doing that on each successive, subsequent, whatever. You keep on doing it until you don't roll the max. That means effectively you can roll as high as you possibly can. It also means you don't have any automatic hit like, you know, critical hit or d20, because you just have to roll high enough, and you can roll high enough. And everyone I play Earthdawn with have some kind of story where their Circle 1 character, or at least someone in their party, went up against a new, with a brand new character, first circle, maybe a few improvements, nothing fancy, go up against something big and large that are meant to scare them away, and they just make a super hit on it. Because here, and this is a thing I actually will be playing with, we're into some of the optional rules, but when you compare the number you roll with the number you had to roll, let's say you need a 15 to hit this vicious bone devil that you should basically just run away from. But hey, you're a super awesome troll warrior, and yes, you can play orcs and trolls and other really cool races off the bat. It's not extra material, it's just there. But when you do that, let's say the warrior jumps out, takes a punch, not shot, but swing at it with his mighty axe or whatever, and he just gets a lucky blow. And he just keeps on rolling. And he ends up rolling like 50 or 60 or whatever to hit. You not only hit it, there are a really horribly designed table, or horribly calculated table, of when your hit turns into a success, or a good success, or a poor success if you roll low, or an extraordinary or heroic success. So they have different levels. So if I were to hit like a 15 to hit this bone devil, whatever, I think a good success would probably be around 30-ish, and an extraordinary success would probably be around 50-ish, high 40s or whatever, low 40s. Again, doesn't matter. But if you hit those numbers, one of them, the first time you get above whatever, it's roughly a multiplier of the original number, but not quite, which makes it impossible to calculate, for me at least. But the first time, if you just hit it, you do normal damage. You roll your damage as well, and your damage you also re-roll, max rolls on each die. Again, remember that you re-roll and add if you roll max on your damage as well, so your damage is also unlimited. But if you roll a good success, means you have an armor defeating blow, because armor in Earthdawn is a number of points you subtract from the damage you take. So if you roll 10 points of damage, you have 5 points of armor, you only take 5 points of armor and 10 damage, so 5 points, whatever. You're better at math than I am. You just subtract your armor rating. Doesn't make you easier or more difficult to hit, you just subtract it. So again, simple, easy, you don't have to worry about the armor. Just look at the stat called physical defense of the monster. It's a 15. Yeah, you rolled a 17, you hit it. But a good success, you ignore the armor, which is really great because you deal more damage. On an extraordinary success, you not only ignore the armor, you also deal double damage. And here, since you already have the re-rolling and stuff like that, double damage is just twice whatever you roll. And now we're back to the very first game session I had in Earthdawn. I played my Elven Archer. We ended up in a very dark cave with some kind of really, really vicious sounding thingy. I have no idea what it was. Monster thing, horror construct, something really vicious. And before we ran away, my Elven Archer, I know, no points for creativity or originality, but my Elven Archer just took a pot shot more or less over his shoulder as we all ran out of the cave. And I just did one of those 40 plus to hit rolls, and then I rolled even higher on the damage, which was then doubled. We never found out if I actually killed the thing because we ran away and we didn't want to go back in and check. It was pitch dark, so we couldn't see anything. But we all knew the high hit roll had been there, and the damage roll was high as well. And our game master was just cracking up, having fun, because it's just, this was meant to scare us away, which it did, so it served its purpose. But I mean, later on when I tried running the same as one of the official modules, when I looked at the stats, I kind of went, when I was gonna run it, oh yeah, I definitely killed off that one instantly. But the thing to remember is this goes both ways. So you're never safe. You can't just hide behind your 200 hit points or whatever you end up having. You can't do that, because you might end up just meeting someone who's insanely lucky, rolls super high, and then you're gone. Some people don't like that. I like having the risk. And also, in Earthdawn, it's not really that bad, because once you're dead, you're not really dead. In addition to various resurrection spells, there are actually fairly common magical potions. I think it's technically a salve, that can resurrect you, or at least give you a chance to resurrect. Yeah, I'm gonna end up explaining more or less the entire Earthdawn system to people here. Please let me know if you need me to talk about something else. But anyway, the way healing works is that instead of having hit dice like D&D does, I shouldn't compare it to D&D, it's not fair to either system really, it's just systems. So instead of, I just went and did it again. No, but what you do is you have, depending on your toughness score, you have a number of recovery tests, and again, depending on your toughness score, you get a certain step number that you roll. Again, if you roll max, you re-roll and add. So you can do that. I can't remember if it's an action or if it takes like 30 seconds or something like that, but it's something pretty fast. You have a number of these per day that you can use, and use them well, because once they're gone, you don't have any more of them. But then you have healing potions, and healing potions will usually work in the way that they make you take a recovery test with a bonus. Now things get really fun, because if you take a large hit over a certain threshold, called your wound threshold, you will, in addition to the damage you take, you will also take a wound. The first wound is free. We all know how that goes. The first one is free, the next one you have to pay for. So the free wound doesn't do a lot. But once you're on your second wound, you subtract 1 from all the step numbers when you're rolling to hit or tests or whatever. You just roll 1 step lower. So that costs you some dice. But when you heal, you also subtract the number of wounds you've sustained. So if you've sustained 3 wounds, someone gave you 3 large hits, or 1 large, because multipliers of your wound threshold will give you multiple wounds. But if it sounds interesting, I should run an Earthdawn game for you guys at some point. I think that would be fun. It's fairly simple. As long as you stick to the basic rules, things flow pretty simple. So anyway, you take a number of wounds, you subtract that. And you can, of course, not heal your wounds until you've healed all your damage. So if you're taking 3 wounds, you subtract 3 from whatever damage you heal. And then all of a sudden those 1d8 recovery tests, they're pretty bad. I mean, you always heal at least 1 point. It's not a cruel system. It's just vicious. So you roll 1d8 minus 3, or whatever the numbers are. And that's how many hit points you get back on that recovery test. And once you're down to 0 hit point, or 0 damage, not 0 hit points, it's actually for various reasons calculated the other way around, so you don't lose hit points, you gain damage. We'll get to that in a little bit. So you just, just regain lose less damage is probably the term we're going for here. And yeah, then once you have no damage left, then you can spend 1 recovery test to remove a wound, and then you can get rid of all your wounds. So normally, I mean, a reasonably sturdy adventurer can usually recover on their own in, on average, I would say less than a week. If you look at the number of recovery tests people have, the recovery die combined with how much damage they can sustain before they drop dead, there's some kind of synergy between it. So even if you have a lower recovery test, regain fewer hit points, it also means you can take less damage, which means you actually heal up again just as quickly as someone, well, not as quickly, but usually as quickly as someone with a lot more hit point, because they can take more damage, but they also generally heal more. This brings us to another fun thing. As I said, you use score or keep a track of how much damage you've taken instead of losing hit points. One of the reasons for that is that you don't just drop dead at a certain point or go to some kind of check for if you survive or not. Before that, at a reasonable distance from dying, you have your unconsciousness rating, and if you hit that without hitting your death rating, you just drop unconscious. So you have that built into a mechanism. You don't really have to keep track of much. You don't have to make any tests to see if you go down. You just check and say, okay, so I'm now at 24 points of damage. That's over my unconscious level, unconscious rating, sorry, but it's still below my death rating. So I'm very much alive. I don't bleed out or anything like that. There are probably some optional rules for it, but this just means you go down. You're still safe, you're still fine, still fairly easy to heal up. Once you go out of combat, you can just, if you have recovery test, you can just take one. Maybe it gets triggered at some point. You can just do that, and if you regain enough or lose enough damage to bring you down below your unconscious rating, you just regain consciousness. Otherwise, people can pop healing potions down your throat and so on, because healing potions, if you don't have a recovery test, they usually give you a pretty basic recovery test. So whatever bonus the healing potion would normally give you, you just get a recovery test of that step. So you can effectively heal by just drinking an infinite number of healing potions. That's going to be expensive though. Okay, so that was a lot of the rules about Earthdawn. Is this beginning to look like a devil? I mean, it's got a ton of highlights and shades and colors, and it looks kind of sort of appropriately chaotic in the paint job. Should probably do something about the spikes, just to make them stand out a bit more. So yeah, it looks bony. And again, it's a little clearer in real life, but I mean, even at the camera, you can easily see, the details and shading and stuff like that. So that's what I'm going for here. So other reason, another reason I really love playing Earthdawn is that when you get experience points or legend points, because it's a super heroic game, when that happens, sorry, I just need to figure out what to do about the spikes. No, I think I'm just gonna, I could go red spikes. I could go red spikes. That would not be bad. Would not. No, when you get your legend points, you don't just wait until you have a certain amount and then gain a level. You just slowly build them up, and but not slowly build them up. When you have them, you can use them to buy more ranks in your attributes, in your skills, in your talents. Talents are effectively magical skills. And they have a certain cost, and they use the Fibonacci scale, so, you know, buying a new skill at level 1 is cheaper than buying it to level 2, and it gets more expensive at level 3, even more expensive at level 4, and then just continues like that. But the concept that you don't just wait until you have a new level and then you get a bunch of stuff, you you gain a lot of things as you go. Which means that it's not a certain point you get a level in new abilities. When you get a new level, a new circle, that just means that you get to you unlock new features that you can then buy with your legend points. And gaining a level or a circle isn't something you really pay for. You just get a certain number of the talents to a certain level, certain rank, which is again, based on whatever level you were on. And once you have that, you can buy talents from the next circle. And once you've bought one of those, congratulations, you are now circle 2. Before I actually do the speed paint, I'm just gonna quickly dry brush the wings a little bit to give a little bit more contrast for the speed paints to work on. So basically, even after your very first game session, you get 200 legend points. You're still far away from getting to level 2, circle 2. But those 200 points can actually buy your rank 1 melee weapons talent all the way to rank 2, thus increasing your step. Increased step means you have different dice to roll next time, and usually, and a higher average. Not usually high average, it's always a higher average. So that kind of sort of incremental progression is something I really like, because it feels like you actually get something out of every single game session you play, not just at certain points in the campaign. You do the same. Your attributes are, not surprisingly, I guess, really expensive to increase, because each attribute will increase a lot of ranks in step numbers in skills and talents and so on. So shouldn't come as a big surprise that they're expensive, but they're so worth it at the same time. And then that way you get to customize your character a lot. All the skills, I mean, technically speaking, yeah, if you want to roleplay it, you should find someone who can teach you the skills and all that, and in the middle of nowhere, may not be able to find a teacher who can teach you a new language or whatever. There's some things with the read and write languages, skills, and so on. But technically, a lot of the things you can do as talents, you can also do as skills, just more expensive and not often not really as good. Fewer bonuses, shorter duration, whatever is appropriate. But the fact that you can get them, you can even get, not mistaken, you can get spellcasting as a skill. However, there are certain things you cannot get. That's probably gonna mean that if you do start slinging spells all over, you're gonna get infected by what's called the horrors that still live in the world. They have one setting. I know people have homebrewed their own, of course, but they have the official setting for Earthdawn. Has a concept of horrors, which is basically really, really nasty things living out in astral space that can sometimes pop through to the real world. One of the ways they can gain access to it is if people cast raw spells using raw magic, which is without a magical condom out in astral space that protects you. So if a horror is nearby when you cast a spell, it will be visible. Well, your spell is always visible in the astral space, and if you do it raw, you open yourself up to contamination. So that's why people don't do it. seriously, I promise you, they often would rather go without their spells if they're not prepared in the right way, than risk raw magic, because these horrors are, a lot of them are really sort of Lovecraftian levels, Elder Ones, Ancient Ones. Cthulhu would fit right in with these guys, to be blunt. And you really don't want that to happen. But that's the fun part as well, because you have this sort of terror, the horrors just being an intricate part of the setting, to the point where it's even a part of the system, spellcasting system. But I think it works, both as a setting and as a rule system. So yeah. And then, as I think I came from the the incremental progression, which, as I said, it's just so super fun, and you can build characters. I mean, we had one of the first campaigns back around 20 years ago. One of the guys decided that he wanted to be the best physician in the world, so he took the physician skill and pulled it as high up as he could get, which meant that he was never really at very high circle with this character. He never really progressed as I believe he was a wizard. Never got really very far, but he was really good at patching people up after fights. And the access to effectively all the available skills, despite what class or discipline it's called, it just opens it up a lot. And yes, you can do a multi-class, multi-discipline thing where you drop down and takes a little bit of wizardry as well and so on, which is fine. It works really well. It's very, in many ways, really streamlined system. Whatever you take from your second discipline just gets more expensive to begin with, and then because of the Fibonacci sequence, it just starts at a higher level. So it'll automatically get insanely expensive at the end. But if you want to do a multi-discipline build, if you have something good you want to do, it's going to be totally worth it. Humans, as their racial ability, they get a versatility talent that just allows them to take talents from other disciplines. So you can actually create a human warrior, and through this versatility, humans are just good at learning stuff and adapting. But through that, they can basically just pick up the spellcasting talent and other things they need straight from the wizard at first circle. So you have a first circle warrior who also runs around casting spells. Again, it's going to cost you a lot of your legend points, which means it's going to take longer until you get to circle 2 or circle 3 and so on. So level progression is going to be slower, but you're going to kind of have this, I don't know, lateral shift. We just go off on to the side or on a tangent, as sometimes it happens, and you just get all these fancy things you can play with. So yeah. So how do you get more hit points? I mean, you don't automatically get hit points when you gain a level. Nope, nothing like that. Your death rating and unconscious rating is based on your toughness step. However, all disciplines get at, I believe it's circle 2. So that's pretty, usually after the first session or two, you will be circle 2, unless your game master has other plans. But from circle 2, they all get a talent called durability, which you can also take as a skill, by the way. Depending on your discipline, each rank you have in durability adds a number of points to your death rating and your unconscious rating, so you just shift those up. But still, you have to buy it, so it gets more and more expensive. And I think some of the sort of normal, average, non-super fighter classes, they get like +6 to death rating and +5 to unconscious rating. So they're gonna go up, but they're gonna get farther away. So your buffer between going unconscious and dying is actually gonna be larger the higher your durability gets. Which may seem like a small thing in the beginning, but once you get that durability up to a rank of 8 or 10, whatever, that 1 point of difference, it's actually going to mean a lot. It's going to be a huge gap between going unconscious and dying, which is kind of had two effects. You know, on the one hand, it's a safety buffer. It's okay, I'm almost unconscious, but it's fine. It's gonna be fine, all of it, because I can take a bunch of damage and still not actually die, so I can keep fighting. I don't have to worry about it too much. However, if you didn't have like the extra buffer between them, you'd just be able to go on longer before actually, you know, dropping unconscious. So a lot of things to consider there. But again, it's kind of, you know, super fun. And I like, again, the customizability of it. As I said, you can just buy durability as a skill, because not all people are magical adepts, and only the magical adepts have the talent. So regular people, if you want to do like the city guard or a militia or just farmers in the field or a bunch of bandits or whatever, let's say they're not these magical adepts that the player characters are, they still have a durability skill you can give them. They still have a melee weapon skill. If you have a wizard, they don't naturally get access to the melee weapons talent, because that's not part of the package, not part of the wizard training, but you can take it as a skill. And then you can build your battle mage. Not really super efficient, but sometimes being able to, I think the elementalist has a spell where they can just effectively make a fire sword, and you just do it for yourself instead of doing it for the fighter in the party. You just drop it on your own sword and then just pounce on whatever unsuspecting bandits thought you were going to be an easy target, because hey, a guy in a, you know, robe and nightcap with a huge book in his hand is going to be an easy target. Famous last words. And then all of a sudden they face a fierce warrior wielding a flaming sword. Yeah, that could work. So anyway, those are some of the options, you know, customizability that just makes the game for me so much more fun. You just play around with all these things. I need my makeup brush. Because dry brushing always means a lot of dust flows down on this previously black base, which is now kind of a dust. I mean, it's supposed to be lava. It's not supposed to look dusty. I mean, dust doesn't survive long in the nine circles of hell, I guess. So yeah, that's the wings done up just a tad bit brighter. Let's go for these speed paints. And since I don't want them to be completely red, let's thin it down a little bit. I have not worked a lot with the speed paints from Army Painter because of the reactivation thing, which trips it up for me when I'm doing normal painting. So I'm not really well versed in how much to thin them down, what gives the best effects. But hey, if there's one thing you should know by now with this when I'm painting, it's that I like to have fun and experiment. So let's do just that. So anyway, more selling points from Earthdawn. Can I pick up anything? Can I find out anything? Oh yeah, the races you have. You have humans, you have dwarves. Dwarves are actually the most common race among the people of the province Barsave that you play in, sort of the official setting. And there's a whole sort of lore reason behind that I'll not go into. Yes, do nicely. Just looking at brushes. So anyway, then you have, of course, you have some humans, you have elves. Dwarves are not the typical fantasy dwarves, but not far from it either. And then you have orcs as a normal player race. While it's true that there are some orc raiders known as scorchers making things problematic at times, orcs in themselves are not like an evil race or anything like that. We have actual monsters for that in Earthdawn. So Orc as player race works fully well. There are going to be biases if they have the how do people look at these sort of on a general level, but it's always, and it's really well explained in the rule books and source books, and it's really up to the individual how they view people, depending on what have your interactions with them been in the past and so on. There are plenty of examples of Orc heroes that are revered by everyone else because they've done, defeated nasty horrors and so on. So there's not in that way a lot of things with the Orcs. Same goes for Trolls, and here Trolls are a lot different. I think Orcs are not too far off from other sort of fantasy games, except for the fact that they are just reasonably well to civilized society. They're empathetic creatures, the Orcs. The Trolls are very different from your average fantasy setting troll. I would say Trolls are really large Orcs. If an Orc stands about, 6'7" or so, a Troll stands about 1.5 to 2 feet higher than that, taller. So Trolls, magnificent fighters, good to have on your side. Really fun to play as wizards because they get some bonuses to their strength and stuff like that actually keeps them going for a long time. And Trolls, they go all in with the horns and tusks. I mean, the Orcs do as well. The Trolls have kind of this bone-like substance growing in their skin. Do they get like an automatic armor bonus or whatever? I can't remember the details. They probably do something like that. Then you have the sort of more exotic races, which aren't really exotic because they're fairly common in the Earthdawn setting. But we have, starting from the shortest of them, we have the Windlings, who are small winged creatures about a foot tall, so really, really small. They make really good thieves, spies, stuff like that. And yeah, can be fun to play. They do open up the problem of having flying player characters, and this is not like the Aasimar or whatever from D&D that can fly once per long or short rest for a short period of time. Windlings can fly effectively non-stop, just like other people walk or run. Windlings just fly. So this is like infinite flying ability. This is built in, and that means you can do split movement to really harass people from above. You can make a Windling mage just sitting high up in the sky, peltering people with spells, or a Windling archer for that matter. You can make another classic character that I've seen a lot of people play, which partly because it is really fun to see in action. There's a discipline called Beastmaster, and Beastmasters have something called Claw Shape, and Claw Shape allows you to physically change your hands into claws. Again, all of these things, they're magical abilities, so anything like that just goes, because hey, magic. And I think that gives a lot of leeway for creativity from the game designers. But a Windling Beastmaster is basically someone who swoops in from above with vicious claws that just tear the opponents to pieces. It is so fun to watch. Especially when they do, the extra damage and double damage and just insta-gips someone for so much damage that they're just outright dead. How does this look? Yeah, I think this works. So yeah, so exactly, scary Windling Beastmasters, or a Windling Archer just sitting like 60 feet up in the air, just poking arrows down at people. That's also fun. Or as I said, the mages, also because, oh, that's an important thing about magic and spells. You don't have a limited number of spells per day. You can cast your spells over and over and over, and when you cast it, there's a setup time usually for the spells. You need to weave some threads to it. Once that is done, on your next turn, you then cast the spell. So you just, set up the spell over a number of rounds. In the beginning, usually either 0 rounds or 1. And then you cast a spell and then you start over. The more powerful the spell, the more threads it needs. Earthdawn is all about threads, by the way, Emmy, so having a good thread organizer is important. Yeah, so you're not limited. So if you had a fireball, I cannot remember, I think the Elementalist gets something resembling the classic fireball spell. But if you have that one, you just cast it again and again and again and again and again. Which means that the concept of a Windling Wizard just hanging up in the air, peltering people with spells or whatever they can find to throw at you, that really is a scary concept, and that's kind of the problem with a fully flying player race. Unless you throw archers at them or whatever, or other flying beasts that can actually catch the Windling, then you have a whole different kind of scenario where you get to play with all 3 dimensions, with height as well for the Windling, where's it going, so on. So yeah. Other than Windling, we also have the Tiskrang, which is a race of lizard people who really, really like to be in the water. I don't think they can actually breathe underwater, but they do make sort of domed underwater cities. They lay eggs. Again, if you want to do the half race thing, mixing it up, there are some issues that need to be solved for that at least. And the Tiskrang are fun because you actually, you have this 6-foot tail sticking out at the back, and it's a lizard tail. It's not like a cat or a rat or anything. You can actually, as a Tiskrang character, you can mount a blade at the end of the tail and use it for an extra attack. So Tiskrang Swordmasters, as well, the discipline is called Swordmasters. So Tiskrang Swordmasters effectively can wield 3 blades at the same time, 1 in each hand and 1 on the tail. Or they can just wield one really, really well and another one on their tail. They don't want to go 2-weapon style. No, I didn't. Okay, that came off. I just poked a little bit of red onto the rest of the devil. Fortunately, it got removed almost completely by my finger, and now pretty much completely by the dry brush. Okay, we're good. So the wings, this actually dries up really pale. As you can kind of see when I angle it here, the front wing. But I kind of like that. I mean, it gives it a little bit of a pink finish to it. But yeah. Anyway, moving on to, I think, the last of the races, as I recall. We have what's known as the Obsidian. Don't let the men fool you. This is just a reference to man as in human, or humanity, meta-humanity, if you will. Obsidian are not born. They just wake up one day in their life rock. And then they spend a couple of years just sitting there, connected to it, learning stuff. Which is fine, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing. That's what they do. They just sit there for a while, and then once they're ready, they just get out of that life rock and just start walking around the Earth. Doesn't that sound fun? I may actually give these another coat. May have thinned down the red a little too much. Now the spikes, I'm not going to do anything to the spikes in the back because that's going to be terrible. Oh, except I'm going to remove the cat hair that got stuck in here somehow. You'd almost think I had cats, wouldn't you? But the spikes, you know, all over his body. It's going to get a quick treat of this. So yeah, so Obsidian, they are literally rocks walking around. I mean, they have some kind of, yes, they do bleed thing going for them. But it's literally, they come out of a rock when they're, you know, quote unquote, born. Which again leads to a completely different way of interacting with other species, you know, from a psychology point of view. When you have to play an Obsidian, you're not thinking in the normal family structures and all that. Which I think gives some really interesting role-playing challenges. That's often because I'm very much into the whole role-playing aspect of things. Just, you know, living and breathing your character, making them come to life. So yeah. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's kind of a trip down nostalgia lane, or whatever good word for it is. We have a saying in Danish that doesn't really translate well to English. I just found out. But I mean, since I started playing Earthdawn 30 or so years ago. Almost 30 years ago, in high school. And I just really liked it instantly. There's so many things that were familiar from fantasy role-playing games. There were also so many other things that just, to me back then, felt more natural, like the progression. You get some points, you buy your skills, you get to choose what you want to get. If you like get a talent at Circle 2 that you don't really care too much about, you can actually pretty much just skip it. You don't have to, you know, buy all your talents up. You can skip some of them, but you still have to buy enough that you still count as a wizard, you know, for progression. But you can also do other things, and then you have the horrors integrated into the entire system and worldview, which works really well because so much is centered about it. Some of the backstory is that the past, well, not for the past period, but for a period of around 400 years, the magic level in the world was so high that the horrors could just basically just break through into the physical world. They didn't have to wait for stupid people to give them a way in. They could just arrive here. And people had known about that for a while, and, you know, just like people today ignore the climate crisis, some people ignored it until it was too late. Other people tried to do something, prepared for it, and then they built this giant caves, underground fortresses and cities called Cairns. I'm sure Cairn is maybe like, I don't know, old Celtic word or something for underground dwelling. Wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And they just built these Cairns with a lot of protective rooms, you know, dug deep into the earth to protect from the horrors when they would arrive, and so on and so on. And you can kind of guess how it goes from there. Some people survived, some people didn't. Some people went mad inside their caves waiting. But eventually the magic level dropped again, and people started roaming the surface of the earth to find that the geography had changed. The horrors had been roaming free for about 400 years, and they had messed up the forests, the animals, anything they could come near. They either devoured or tainted and corrupted. So lush forest would turn into terrible jungles with poisonous plants, venomous critters. Critters would be mad with the pain and the horrors had inflicted on them, all that kind of thing. Some cares would be overrun and would, instead of being full of live people, would be full of a zombie-like monster type called cadaver men, which is just raised people, animated people. Oh yeah, the red spikes really just add that last detail to the miniature, just makes it just pop just a little bit, makes it less dull. But I am gonna stay away from its face. Maybe do the eyes. Yeah, definitely do the eyes. Oh, and the stinger. They make the. I was just about to say the wheels, but the wings down here at the angles. You see it. Oh, the thorns coming out of this guy again reminds me more of a thorn. Hey, I can keep going all night with this. No, but one of the elven settlements, or the main elven settlement, I mean, this is not spoilers, this is literally in this section called How It Came to Pass. They had believed that their forests and the magic of the forest and tree magic, so on, would protect them, so they didn't need to dig into the ground, because elves, trees, outdoors, that kind of thing. Yeah, no, let's just say that. So they realized way too late that they were about to get overrun, because the horrors, and this is the thing, you need to really fully, you can never fully understand and grasp horrors, just like you can never really fully grasp the Lovecraftian horror, elder ones and great old ones. They don't think like beings. They're not people. They're entities. They're creatures at best. So they would happily sit for years outside a care. Once they found a care, they knew there were goodies inside. They would just sit there, gently, just picking away at the defensive magic runes, and spend years, decades sometimes even, just destroying the runes and the magic holding them out, until eventually it would break. And while this happens, often the people inside the care, at least so some of the stories go, and my imagination likes to fill in those kind of blanks, but the people inside the care would be able to hear the horror picking away, and they know that the second their defenses break, they're going to be, well, if they're lucky, they're going to be eaten alive. If they're unlucky, they will survive as slaves to this horror. And usually the horrors doing this are the really nasty, intelligent ones, or some kind of definition of intelligence that has nothing to do with rationality. They would be super twisted, or maybe they would somehow infect people's minds and make them do things for them. Horrors live off of pain, suffering, and basically spreading horror. I guess it's pretty aptly named. And then, when the elves realized that the horrors were just pretty quickly, relatively speaking, the horrors would get through all the defenses. So they started looking for alternate ways of dealing with that. And they found a way that was truly terrible. Because the mages, having studied all of this and having studied the horrors, they knew that the horrors, thrived on pain. They lived off of the pain and suffering. So they came up with a theory and came to the conclusion that what would work against the horrors would be to inflict so much pain and suffering on themselves that the horror wouldn't be able to gain anything more from them. Because the horror, some horrors do enjoy other people's inflicted pain, but to really feed of it, the horror has to do it themselves. That's the theory. So the elves made Alright, okay, see you, Em. So, you're just gonna have to wait to hear what the elves did to themselves, I guess. It's gonna be a spoiler for later. For those remaining, other than being able to see this pretty little being here, but for those remaining, I will tell you that it worked. So, okay, so Emily's still listening, just lurking in the background. Cool. Enjoy work. I hope the horror stories don't seep into your work. That would be terrible. No, but the elves, and that's what this guy reminded me of. What the elves did was that they made a ritual that did this whole super pain and suffering on themselves. Specifically, thorns started growing out of their skin. So they are now the ones living up in that part of the forest. It's now called Bloodwood instead of Wormwood, because the elves are constantly bleeding, constantly suffering. And at the time that the normal Earthdawn timeline picks up, the elves have not found a way to reverse that ritual. So for the last several hundred years, all these elves, descendants of them as well, but a lot of them have been alive for hundreds of years. And of course, Emily's ghost lol to the elves inflicting torment on themselves. I gotta love that one. No, but basically, the elves now known as Blood Elves, because again, why not? Suitable name for them. They just literally run around with thorns sticking out of their skins. So at family reunions, when the long-lost cousins from other places come back home to Bloodwood, they're not big on hugging each other, I would guess. I'm just guessing here, don't really know for sure. But yeah, that's kind of part of the Earthdawn mythology and world. Yeah. Meanwhile, we've gotten a bunch of red on the devil. And what I really like about this kind of miniature is that there are a lot of details. Super great miniature from MZ4250. This is Miguel something, can't remember his last name. He does basically, I think he's done by now all the different monsters in the monster manual of various kinds for D&D 5th edition. So a ton of stuff. Some of it is free, other is just join his Patreon for I think $10. You get access to the entire archive, so you can download all of it if you want. But hey, please keep supporting him, because he does all this great work. A couple more spikes needs. We need more red on the devil here. But yeah, no, the Blood Elves, horrible thing they had to do to themselves, but they survived because of it. And that gives, adds the whole sort of political aspect. Earthdawn was made by FASA, who also did Shadowrun. And both those games and the game walls and the way FASA sort of built those worlds and evolved them over the years, they both include a lot of politics. That's important to keep in mind, because there's a whole problem with the elves is that, and that actually started before the Scourge when the horror started showing up, because Wormwood, which turned into Bloodwood, is where the Elf Queen sat and had her court. So she kind of feels like she's still in charge. Well, maybe she's dead, I can't remember. I'm not good at history lessons as such, but basically whoever's up there kind of thinks that they're, the rightful ruler of all the elves. Whereas all the elves who kind of went, nope, you're on your own up there. We're gonna, find a nice big hole in the ground and go hide for 400 years. Well, those people are not that happy with those decisions, and later, after the Scourge, finding out that the elves did this terrible ritual to themselves, the thorns and everything. Yeah, I can kind of see where people go, you're not gonna be in charge anymore. We don't really trust you when you did that. You're not really fully there in your brain anymore. You're always bleeding. You kind of don't smell that good either. Stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know what criteria elves really use for picking their leaders, but I'm guessing that might be some of it. So yeah, so So you have the elves being torn in different factions. On top of all of this, as if the horrors weren't enough, as if this split in the elves and blah blah blah, as if all of that was not enough, we have even more fun in store. Because I said the bar save, the world you play in traditional setting. Bar save is a province, and I called it that as well. The reason it's a province is that you have a kingdom right next door, empire, technically speaking. You have an empire called Thera, and Thera claims that Barsave is a Theran province. So all your people who just came out of the Cares after 400 years, blah blah blah, you're our people. And not only that, there's about 1500 years of backstory to all of that. But on top of that, Thera has somehow made the logical, to their minds, the logical conclusion that all the people in Barsave who survived the Scorch do so because of the Theran magic that let them build the Cares. That part is sort of arguably correct, but the next part is a little controversial because they go on to say, the Therans, that because you're only alive because of our magic, you owe us your lives, which essentially means that you are all our slaves. We can do whatever we want to you and with you. So if you'd please line up in an orderly fashion, come over here so we can pick you all up and send you to the mines. So now we have a huge empire who, before the Scorch, were the only one who had enough magic to do anything about the horrors, and who researched, built all the protective magic that saved people. They now believe that they own the entire world and all the people in it. Well, there's more to the world than just Thera and Barsave. But definitely, Barsave is high on their list because Barsave is rich in resources, and you know how that goes. So how do you deal with that? Well, you have a bunch of wars and blah 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 and so on. Oh, another selling point: flying ships. Not airplanes, but actual flying ships, including huge stone behemoths. I mean, that alone sold one of the players I'm playing with. She just went, I didn't know what was, she said something like, I didn't know I needed that, but now I do. So she needs flying ships in her life. Oh, and actually, once you have any kind of ships doing trade routes and stuff like that, you will of course also have raiders. So you have, I think they're called the Crystal Raiders, because they live in the Crystal Mountains, primarily trolls. So you'll have these flying, small, fast flying ships filled with big badass trolls who will literally jump from one ship to the other, go full, take all the old fun, wonderful swashbuckler movies, and add trolls and flying ships instead of pirate ships, whatever. Errol Flynn would fit right into those, to that setting. And you have that because some of the magical talents that the Sky Raider discipline has is some kind of gliding fall that allows them to survive really, really long drops. They also get magical jumping talents that allows them to actually jump, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 feet, however it is. It's huge jumps so they can get from one ship to the other. And that entire setting, I mean, somehow all of this, they've managed to fit all of this into the same world and make all of it make sense, at least to me. So it fits well. The world building is, in my mind, one of the best. It's not the largest world by any means at all. It's nowhere near as large as Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, or anything like that. But there are so many things there, and it is a super heroic world and system. So it's really just, hey, let's go be heroes. I mean, technically you could be other things as well, of course, but it's really aimed at, you know, the heroic play style, which means that the whole concept of jumping from one ship to the other to saving the day or whatever, you can build that into your campaigns. All the player characters are inherently magical. Some are spellcasters, others just have these magical talents. I think the warrior class, which I really, really like, the warrior class is very much dex based. In fact, I think all weapons, melee weapons, so on, they're based on dex instead of strength, or, you know, their base ability, which I also like because it's just, I don't know, it's your dex you use to hit people, not your strength. Then your strength determines how much damage you deal once you hit people. But the warrior is then very high on the dex thing, so it's not like the heavy armored classic medieval knight you'll have running around. You just have this really sort of light, flowing thing, and I think one of their air dance, one of their talents, they literally just float a couple of inches over the ground, boosting their initiative. Yay! What's not to like? You have flying warriors. Well, a few inches, few centimeters, whatever, but still, you have flying things. All of that is just, to me, so much fun. Okay, I cannot remember. I do remember I needed to clean up a little bit around the black. I almost couldn't remember which shade I used for the color in here, but it is a Citadel Seraphim Sepia, which is a super good shade. So it wasn't actually one of the Armor Painter's soft tones or anything like that. But we need that just to quickly touch up stuff around the feet. And then I need to figure out what to do with the nails, because I don't mind doing the claws, or sort of the spikes, sorry. I don't mind doing the spikes red, but I kind of have a feeling that if I do the claws and nails, if I do them red, some of the players and the game master is gonna make, you know, crack jokes at the makeup and the it's called fingernail, nail gloss, nail polish. What do I know about makeup? Could also just leave it as is. Maybe do them. You could give them some gray to it. Not really. I'm not gonna go metal on it, but maybe gray. Let me think on that for a while. Bone we have somber gray, we have a gold gray. I'm just touching it up real quick with that. It's gonna, yes, I think that's probably gonna look okay. So that is what we're gonna do. Excuse me. Actually, it's actually kind of funny because for, you know, giving this speech, I mean, I knew I'd enjoy going back into Earthdawn, but giving this entire speech really made me see how much I've missed that, you know, both the world and the system and all the concepts in it. So yeah, I mean, I think the system on its own, if you take it out in a different setting where you don't have the horror, so you don't need the protection as such from, you know, when casting spells, the system may break a little bit, sort of thematically at least, But if you're okay with that, and instead of going, oh, we have spell slots, just going, oh, I need to prepare my spells in a certain way, and you can redo them at any time really, including in the middle of combat. It's just kind of difficult to do it in the middle of combat, and it takes time. But if you can sort of live with that level of abstraction, I think the Earthbound system on its own works pretty well. On the combat side of things, you have a bunch of combat options that I always end up missing in other systems, like the fact that you don't need a fighting style, but everyone can just say, hey, I'm gonna be aggressive in this round. And aggressive means that it's gonna be easier to hit you. Or aggressive, I'd say sort of reckless. It's kind of that in other systems. But here the aggressiveness means you just do an all-out attack. It becomes easier for you to hit, but people can also easier hit you. But it's not like advantage disadvantage, which really fiddles with the odds in D&D. Just add 3. You add 3 to your attack, but all attacks against you are also at a +3. So again, this is the sort of step numbers going up and down. But then your damage step when you're aggressive also goes up by 3 steps, so you hit easier and you deal a ton of damage. And then afterwards, people are gonna have a really easy time hitting you, but at least they don't get the damage bonus. They're just gonna hit you like forever. They have rules for what happens when you're surrounded by other people. You get harried, and that will sort of pull down. I think your step numbers go down. You get a penalty if you're doing that. You have some, I think there's still some friend and melee rules as well, where you kind of do a net who has the most friends and so on. And a lot of these things are, yes, rules that you need to learn, can be a little cumbersome at first because it's a different way than what a lot of people are used to from role-playing systems. But I do still believe that the system in itself is fairly simple. What makes it somewhat hard to get into is the sheer number of skills and talents that you have to start looking into. But again, if you just want to play and want to have fun, just stick to whatever discipline you feel is fun. If you want to play a wizard, play a wizard. If you want to play an illusionist, do that instead and just go with the flow and see whatever they have. The talents they have, just stick to them. That'll simplify it a lot. The same goes for the skills. Yes, it's really great to have skills and flesh out your character with them, but technically speaking, it's not really necessary if you again just want to get going. And then as you move on, you can always just buy the skills later on. There's no real there's nothing stopping you from buying it at a later point. Maybe training time if your DM insists on that and so on. But I mean that's kind of, that just means you'll have downtime in your group, which is, in my opinion, generally a good thing to have in all campaigns and settings and groups and so on, because it gives you a bit more than just the run around in dungeons bashing up monsters. So yeah, what else is to say? Yeah, we actually, as a house rule, because we felt that people neglected buying skills in favor of talents because you use the same legend points. One of the game masters in my group, we're several people, we just take turns. But one of them came up with the idea of, in parallel to the legend points we get, we also get skill points, and skill points can only be used for skills. You can still use your legend points for skills as well as the skill points, but that way he forces people to actually buy some skills, or just have this huge bank of skill points sitting around unused. Which, I mean, how many role players do you know who just leaves resources like that sitting around, kind of like going, oh, D&D style, oh, you're gonna get a new level after this. No, it's fine, I'm okay at level 10, I don't need level 11. 10 is fine. I'll wait a bit. I mean, people don't do that. They use these things, or you know, with the skill points and so on, they'll save up to whatever they need, which is, yeah, again, perfectly fine. So yeah. Okay. Have I been talking about Shadowrun for an hour and a half now? Probably. And Bill hasn't showed up. The cretin. Yeah, sorry. Just working on the toes here, so I'm just gonna be a little focused. Ooh, you get to level soon in the Incorrigible party. What are you then, level 11-ish by now? I should have a chat with Leland and say that Bill does not deserve his level. Ooh. Well, Ebenezer, the good news is that Earthdawn is, I think it's a very available system. The PDFs are available at least. Not a lot of stores in Denmark actually have the 4th edition rulebooks, but you can find also all the old ones. I think it's on Drive. It's called Drive-Thru RPG. So you can, you know, get the PDFs for, I don't know, $30 or whatever. So if you do find some players eventually, you know, that's been a bit of an issue over in your neck of the wood. If you do find some players, just give it a go. I really think it's like $30 for the rulebook, which is, you know, not that bad. And there's a player's compendium and a game master's compendium. Both books are 500 plus pages. It's a good idea to have the GM's compendium as well. But that being said, it doesn't mean that you have to read all 500 pages and understand all 500 pages to get any kind of sense out of it. Don't worry about that. It's just that the you have, you know, all the spell listings and, you know, the talent lists and all that. I think the talents alone are like more than 100 pages, and the spells are probably another 100 or so. And then you have the skills on top of that. So it's a really large system by now. It's because the classic edition, which is the one I'm talking about here, the classic edition took a lot of the source books and additional rule books from first edition and bundled all of it into one book. So you get more detailed information about each available discipline. You get a little bit more about the races. You get the system called talent knacks, which are, when you have the talent melee weapons, you can get a talent knack called whatever. I haven't played this in years, I can't remember the details. But you buy the talent knack, and then you can also use your melee weapon to do this effect. And it's usually it's super cool effects you can do, like, I don't know, somersault through the air and then hit pounds on someone. You know, stuff like that. It's effective and more fun. Gives more options to play with. So, yeah. And no, I don't get any kind of royalties from Besa, whoever actually owns Earthdawn at the moment. Or, you know, for any of this promotion that I'm apparently started doing. I just enjoy the game, but I hope other people will enjoy it as well. Which actually, you know, should reach out to a ton of D&D players about it, because from what I hear, the new edition of D&D, you know, the 1 D&D, so one of the sort of video by Discourse Miniatures, who in her, you know, own right is just super fun to watch. a very entertaining YouTuber. Apparently Hasbro, who owns Wizard of the Coast, who owns the D&D franchise or whatever, don't feel that D&D is monetized enough. So take a guess at where that is going. We don't really know yet, but I kind of have a feeling that the whole going digital combined with not monetized enough is, yeah, you said it, Emily, microtransactions. And yeah, sure, you can say that you have something like this in that you buy the rule books today, or you can buy individual monsters in D&D Beyond. But the fact that all of it goes digital kind of scares me a little bit. Not less I'm frightened, but the business model. I'm afraid of what it will do if you can't just go down, buy a couple of books, and just play. I mean, if you cannot do that with a role-playing game, if you have to run things digitally, I wouldn't buy into that, to be honest. I just wouldn't. It's one of the reasons I play tabletop RPGs is the whole tabletop part of it. And yeah, I mean, playing digitally with people from across the world, absolutely smashing and fun. It's really great, especially during Corona lockdown. Wonderful things, with the virtual tabletops like Foundry, which is my favorite. I'm totally biased for that one. But Roll20, all the other ones. Heck, you can even do it in Tabletop Simulator. Would be good enough. Or just do it on chat or video chat with Theater of the Mind. So digital content, and I love using D&D Beyond. Looking up stats and so on is super easy to search. Far easier to search a PDF than a book. But a good index, never hurt anyone. On the contrary. Which, by the way, the classic edition of Earthdawn has a really good index at the back. Very easy to find what you're looking for. Just saying. Sorry, I couldn't resist myself there. Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid that I don't think D&D is ever gonna go away. It's like so many other things. It's gonna be sticking around. But I think the experience is gonna change a lot. And probably just like a lot of people are sticking to 3.5 or 3, or even some of the older ones. I think this, in reality, a lot of people who bought into it with hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of books, both physical and digital, they're not just gonna go out one day and say, oh hey, I'm just gonna replace my entire library. So they may still be selling things if it's backwards compatible, which they claim it will be. But at some point you're gonna kind of hit the, I don't know, the tipping point where people either go, yeah, okay, so now they've diverged too far from original D&D as I knew it, so I'm just gonna stick to my books and the content I already have and not use the new virtual tabletop they're apparently building. So it's probably not gonna kill it outright, but it's definitely gonna impact the sales. If you have like, I don't know, let's just take a rough, I'm not even gonna call it a guess, but let's just for the fun of it say, okay, only half of the people playing D&D actually fully embrace the new digital experience. It's gonna take a long time, replacing the existing players with new players. Also because a lot of the new players coming in will probably be playing with people sticking to their books and 5e. So yeah. I mean, it in many ways it's gonna be an interesting experience. Experiment, not necessarily experience. Interesting experience to see in a couple of years where Hasbro is and where D&D is, and if Hasbro actually goes, whoops, this was not a good idea, or maybe, hey, you never know, maybe they actually succeed with it. Maybe they succeed getting enough customers to embrace that style of business model everything. I don't know. I'm not a business person. Vanessa will be 5e only, not going to support D&D 1. I think that's a very good idea, Vanessa, for two reasons. One is that doesn't sound like it'll be worth supporting, and the other one is that it's actually called 1 D&D, so there's not going to be a D&D 1. But you're not the first person I've seen make that mistake. Basically, all the people I know in real life that I've talked to about it call it D&D 1, because we're so used to call it D&D 1, 2, 3 using version numbers, and now they're doing it D&D 1, which is, I don't know. I'm easily amused, I guess. Ooh, the claws are going well. And the claws are going best when I'm not holding the miniature, I'm just leaving it on the table, because my hands are super shaky. Yeah, just it's getting there with the claws. A little more highlight on one of them. And we are, well, we actually, wow, hitting the 2-hour mark quite nicely. I think the only thing left really after the claws is just touching up the black on the base a little bit. Whenever I actually sort of hold the miniature and fiddle it around, I just slowly wear off the black, and I didn't think to give it any kind of varnish before moving on to actually paint it. So it's a little worn in places, but that's very easily fixed. It's just 1 or 2 passes with a black, and then we're good to go. What am I doing here? Doing this. I'm painting the inside of claws that no one will ever see. So yeah. But again, I mean, even your reaction there going, oh, it's gonna be 5e only for you. I fully support that, because I think it makes perfect sense to stick to it. It's one of these, there's nothing wrong, and yet so many things wrong with 5th edition, just like with any other role-playing system. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong in the system. I don't see a need for changing anything. No, unless you want to go full-blown, let's get rid of, of classes and levels and do level-less D&D. But then you could argue that A, it is not backwards compatible, and B, is it really D&D? Because it's kind of like its thing, the levels and all those things. So I don't see a need to move away from D&D to a new version of D&D. I see a reason to move to other systems. Like if I want to do a really hardcore cyberpunkish setting, I would definitely go for Shadowrun, because I know it. And it has magic. I believe the cyberpunk system doesn't really have magic in the same way as other systems, if it even has it at all. I've never looked into it, but that's my impression. So yeah, I mean, there are plenty of reasons to play other systems that are better suited for sci-fi. If you want to go full-blown Warhammer 40k style, far out into the future, then there are a lot of things in D&D that would have to be changed, upgraded, homebrewed, whatever you want to call it. The claws and the feet are off. Needs more highlight, just a bit. So yeah, so I'm guessing that if I do, the D&D I'll continue to play is probably gonna be 5th edition as well, or will just be playing other systems. There's so many other, completely other systems, a lot of independent systems popping up a lot over the last, many years by now. There's the Forbidden Land from New League, Free League. It's called Free League, Swedish company. I can't remember if they're the ones doing Mörk Borg, which means Dark Castle. That's gotten a lot of attention lately. I've heard a lot of people mention it in good ways. So it's not that we're missing other systems to play, or lacking other systems to play. It's just some people kind of put an equality sign between role-playing and D&D. And I think Hasbro is riding that wave. Kind of like Games Workshop is trying to make people think that anything to do with miniatures on a table killing each other is called Warhammer. Oh yeah, I know you're not saying that you won't try out other RTRPGs. It's just you're gonna stick to 5e for D&D if you do. For D&D as a system, so you're not gonna be moving to 1D&D. I got that. But other TTRPGs, like for instance Earthdawn, that you said you wanted to try, definitely an option. So anyway, I think that's the Devil's Manicure. I need to use that in the story or whatever. That was soap. Okay, so to preserve my brushes, what I sometimes do is when I put them away, I roll them in soap and then form it into a tip. But I have this tendency to just pick up my brushes and just lick them ever so gently, just to form it with my the tip with my tongue. Brush soap does not taste well, I can tell you that. And yes, it is very, very much allowed to laugh at me for doing stuff like this. Just quickly touch up the rim of the base and then we're all done. And we do have one final treat for you before I leave. And that is to show what Bill is missing out on. This is my Christmas gift to myself this year. And I just need to get, pull around here and I will reveal it in I messed that one up. I will reveal it in all its glory, if at least I knew how to speak. So, there we go. That is one handsome devil indeed. If you ask me, and I painted it, so it's my stream. No. Okay, so Emily, this is what I would have been teasing Bill with. Not sure how visible it is right here, but I can play around a little with the camera. It is the new Stream Deck Plus. Well, it's a couple of months old, but it is there, and it has the fiddly knobs. And they don't go sort of continuously. They have steps to them, but they're really soft steps and sharp at the same time. I mean, it's really. I love, you know, knobs that turn and stuff like that because it's so easy to control things. And that one, those ones, they're really nice. They just have a good feel to them. The sort of not click kind of thing, but still kind of sort of the steps when you feel them. You have to apply a little bit of pressure to get to the next one, but there's no slack in it. It's super tight, so when it actually gets to the next step, it just stops instantly. Despite you're moving it, but it stops because you just, for my fingers at least, that's perfect. I haven't played around with the buttons yet. The screen in the middle is a touch screen divided into 4 sections, so you actually can have 4 buttons on it. You can slide back and forth. You can program different pages, so the 8 buttons you have, and the display, the switch to slide to a new page, and you have a different setup. I have not had time over Christmas to play around with it, but it's gonna be so cool. I look so much forward to it. And yeah, with that, I do believe we've come to the end of the stream. So I will say thank you for joining. Please stick around and let's go invade Mokomate. Could be hanging around for a while. Let's see. I have not done this in way too long. Please stick around and we'll start a raid in a few seconds. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here, as always. And yeah, Emily, don't forget to tease Bill endlessly with all these things. Stay frosty and come join me at Mokomate.